Why? After the last human landing on the moon in 1972, I never went up again. Not even once. This is so weird. So much so that many people directly use this as evidence. It is said that the United States has never landed on the moon at all. They were all taken in the studio. Let's take a good look today. Why humans never return to the moon? I really can't go. Still don't dare to go at all. And you know what? Hindering the return of humans to the moon, in addition to astronomical budgets and deadly radiation, and something else you would never have thought of. That is the seemingly inconspicuous dust on the moon. They are the most terrible killers. December 1972, the astronauts of Apollo 17, the last footprints were left on the surface of the moon. Since then, more than 50 years have passed. Humanity never heard it again, similar to how we landed. Such exciting words. Think about sending 12 people to the moon. This is probably the best thing NASA has ever done. Each lunar mission has 3 astronauts. 2 astronauts will go down for a walk. 1 stayed in the orbital module to watch the house. That's it. 12 Earthlings left footprints on the moon. What are they doing there? Pick up stones and take photos for experiments. Planted the flag and then went home. But let's be honest. These few short stays in a fancy way. It's not a long-term station at all. Apollo 10-7 spent more than 3 days on the moon. Then there is a 50-year blank period. Now everyone feels like it's time to return to the moon. Researchers and business tycoons. I have long wanted to build a lunar base that can be inhabited. The moon is actually only 3 days away from the Earth. It's really not far, because in the past, many people take the green train to the far end. It could take a week. So what can the lunar base do? First of all, it can be used as a space gas station. Refuel ships that are going further afield. Secondly, build a space telescope on the moon. That's really fragrant. There is no atmospheric trouble. Seeing it is called a clear one. And if you want to go to Mars, the moon can also be used as a transit point. In addition, by studying the moon, we can unravel a lot. Mysteries about the origin of the Earth and this satellite. Of course, the economic benefits cannot be ignored. Maybe lunar tourism can become the next flashpoint. Imagine this. Middle-aged and elderly sightseeing groups bouncing on the moon. Isn't it a bit interesting? About returning to the moon, NASA can be called a master of painting cakes. Said he wanted to do an Artemis project. This time we will send female astronauts up. After all, the first 12 are all men. This matter should indeed be changed. The Artemis program was established in 2017. At the beginning, it was said that the moon would be landed in 2024. Then this change will be until 2025. Then it was changed to 2026. Now the latest news is that we have to wait until the end of 2027. So why is this so difficult? The first and most deadly thing is money. NASA's budget for 2022 is $24.04 billion. Sounds like a lot. But you look at the U.S. Department of Defense. In 2023, it took $858 billion. NASA's money is only a fraction of what it is. What's worse? Trump will meet you. It also wants to increase NASA's budget from $25 billion in 2025, cut to $20 billion in 2026. Directly cut 20%. $24 billion sounds like a lot. But you have to know, this money, all projects to be distributed to all NASA departments. James Webb Space Telescope, Super Heavy Launch Vehicle, a probe that flies to the Sun. Missions to Jupiter and Mars. Explore the asteroid belt and the Kuiper belt. There are even missions to fly to the edge of the solar system. This money is simply not enough to spend. You must know NASA's share of the U.S. federal budget. The highest peak was in 1965. A 4% have been below 1% for the last 40 years. In the past 15 years, it has only been about 0.3%. In 2005, NASA did the math. It costs $104 billion to return to the moon. The time span is 13 years. Taking into account inflation, convert to the current currency value, about $170 billion. As a contrast, how much did the Apollo program cost back then? At today's value, it's almost the same number. The problem is NASA's current budget. It is simply not enough to support this plan. After all, how much money can NASA get? It depends on how much the US government is willing to give, and how much the government is willing to give. It depends on whether the people support it. But embarrassingly, Americans have little interest in landing on the moon. Even at the height of the Apollo program, Aldrin and Armstrong have just set foot on the moon. Only 53% of Americans think it's worth it. After a long time, this number is hovering below 50%. Now things are a little better. A survey in December 2018 showed 57% of Americans feel returning to the moon is important for NASA. But in this 57%, only 38% think it should be sent up. The remaining 19% think that it is enough to send robots. This attitude is somewhat a bit like landing on the moon, but don't spend that much. Don't let people do what robots can do. Insufficient budget is only one aspect. The bigger question is, the moon is really deadly. It has existed for 4.5 billion years. In this long time, it became a crater and rock. Giant death trap. I want to build a base on the moon. You have to face deadly radiation. Regularly send supplies to the colonists. It also has to be solved in a microgravity environment. How to go to the toilet. But today let's focus on it. A problem that has not been noticed very much. The more sinking this thing is a nightmare for people and equipment. To solve it, billions of dollars have to be burned. In the 60s of the last century, science fiction god Arthur Clarke wrote this novel. It's called Moon Dust. In it, humans in the 21st century have colonized the moon. He also drove the moon dust car around. In that era, some scientists even think the surface of the moon is covered with a layer of dust up to 10 meters thick. Imagine this. If this is true, the landing capsule will sink directly into it. How embarrassing that scene was. In order to find out what is really going on the surface of the moon, the United States has a Prowler program. Throw an unmanned probe to the moon. Let them take pictures and videos. Finally crashed. Prowler 7 launched in July 1964. High-definition photos were taken before the impact. Only then did it turn out that the sinking layer was only a few centimeters thick. Although it is not as exaggerated as imagined. But NASA is still very worried. Will this dust stick to the spacesuit? Will it affect astronaut operations? Will there be problems with the separation of the landing module and the ascent module? Engineers anticipated the engine will raise a lot of dust when landing. So Apollo 11 was fully prepared. Train astronauts to operate in low visibility. Equip the spacecraft with a bunch of sensors. The landing process is designed to be as gentle as possible. It is to reduce the impact on the ground. As a result, the first astronauts who landed on the moon soon found out. The more you sink, the more troublesome it is. This thing is extremely small, and it's sharp. Because there is no wind and no water on the moon, these tiny particles are never eroded and rounded, forever kept jagged. Their adhesion is ridiculously strong. The astronauts described, it felt like a living creature was crawling on me, on the legs, arms, on the helmet. Everywhere is covered with a layer of fine particles. What's even weirder is that lunar dust seems to float on the surface of the moon. The particles hardly interact with each other. New layers of dust are constantly forming. What's going on? A meteorite hits the moon. The surface of the sphere produces high temperatures. The rock composed mainly of silicon is heated and mixed to crush. The surface of the moon is covered with a thin layer of moon dust. The texture is like talc. Some areas are a few centimeters thick. Due to the action of the solar wind, this dust is static. It's like the kind that crackles when you take off your sweater in winter. It is extremely abrasive. Adhesion explosive. Can be extremely fast. Contamination of spacesuit vehicles and various systems. And the more this thing is cleaned, the worse it gets. It can leave deep scratches on spacesuits and equipment. This dust accumulates on the device. It can also overheat due to the absorption of solar radiation. In order to study the properties of lunar soil, the astronauts took samples from different places, packed into a sealed aluminum container. But wait for them to return to Earth. The container has been scratched. The sealing parts were also damaged. These are all good things that Yu Chen has done. In the early 60s, NASA's biggest concern is cosmic radiation and low gravity. There are also psychological problems with astronauts. The real trouble was Yu Chen. Many astronauts recalled. The moon sinking was the biggest challenge they encountered on the moon. Worse, astronauts don't just use sealed containers, brought the moon dust back to Earth. Even they themselves were covered in this thing. Meet 60S. Conclusions on the composition of moon dust, also mainly based on photo analysis. Doctors recommend that returning astronauts must be quarantined. NASA is worried. Moon dust particles may contain a certain pathogen, not only threatening humanity, it can also harm plants. So the returning astronauts will be quarantined for 21 days. This led to them and the reporter's family. Even when national leaders meet, the scenes are quite funny. Can only wave through the glass. For scientists, every lunar material that astronauts bring back, they are all babies. So they ask the astronauts to return to Earth. Don't wash the space suit. It's too clean. Lunar just drilled into the lunar module. It also drilled into the command module. The astronauts were on the return trip for several days. Breathe these things all the time. They say moon dust smells like gunpowder. It's strange, because from the composition, moon dust is completely different from gunpowder. And this smell disappeared on Earth, perhaps because there is almost no humidity on the moon. To Earth, moisture changes its properties. The effect of moon dust on the human body. It gradually became clear in later research. NASA pathologist Russell Kochman mentioned silicosis. It is the kind of disease that miners often get. It may also harm astronauts. The particles in the sedimentation combine with the silicates on the Earth. It can lead to pulmonary fibrosis. But the harm of moon dust is not limited to the lungs. A 2018 study showed a dangerous under and challenging conditions. It could be a moon dust can destroy up to 90% of brain cells, although the specific mechanism is not clear. So scientists strongly recommend before the next moon landing, design a multi-layer protection system. Doctors of the Apollo era, not sure if inhaling moon dust is harmful. Only one astronaut returned complaining of lung pain. Bronchitis-like symptoms are described, known as lunar fever, but I didn't need treatment. In 1969, Apollo 11 was equipped with a brush, rags and vacuum cleaners to deal with moon dust. None of them worked. Just stubbornly adheres to equipment and spacesuits. It can't be cleaned up at all. The astronauts were quite helpless. Look at the Apollo 16 mission. Just raced at the Lunar Rover Grand Prix. You know how difficult this thing is. Even tape is not easy to use on the moon. And the tape is for astronauts and astronauts, a versatile tool for repairing things on your ship. Astronauts of Apollo 17, the tailgate of the lunar rover was repaired with gray tape. But not once. The dust of success immediately sticks to the tape. Tear the tape apart. The parts to be glued will not stick at all. Now hundreds of scientists and inventors, in an effort to learn from the experience of Apollo and unmanned missions. Engineers, it is already in research. How to prevent dust from sticking to various surfaces. Research is also being done to remove particles that have already been deposited. In the past 50 years, humans have developed new materials and mechanisms. Or it can fight dust accumulation, or can resist its effects. The new lunar spacesuit design minimizes seams. Zippers, rivets, buttons, as few as possible. Prevent dust from getting in. The material will be made up of compounds that produce anti-static effects. Some tools and equipment are coated with chemicals. Mimic the lotus leaf effect. Let the dirt slide away on the surface. But it is not clear how long this effect lasts. I don't know. Will it affect the ergonomics of the handheld tool? For the pollution that has formed, it is planned to clean up with ultrasonic equipment to generate vibrations. The concept of a lunar vacuum cleaner existed back in 1991, but because there is no demand, stay on the drawings. There are already several prototypes in 2021. One of them, it was developed by students under a NASA collaborative project. Where constant vibration doesn't work, scientists propose to use an electric field to drive away small particles, while large particles are the opposite. Recharge them, then attract it with a special refueler. These techniques, it is mainly used in lunar vehicles and other devices with moving parts. In these places, preventing dust accumulation is crucial. It is difficult to clean up by other methods. It is impossible for astronauts to bring a lot of tools and spare parts, because designers have to tightly control the equipment, weight and repair capacity. So between durability and lightness, it is important to find a balance. SLS rockets plan for the Artemis mission. Depending on the task, the carrying capacity is between 27 to 46 tons. In the 1970s, Saturn V could carry 48 tons. In addition, sunlight creates additional difficulties. Because the moon is not protected by the atmosphere, the temperature ranges from minus 173 degrees Celsius at night to 127 degrees Celsius with direct exposure to the sun. About 14 consecutive days, the surface of the moon is under intense direct sunlight. Roast and boil. The next 14 days fell into complete darkness. Make the moon one of the coldest places in the universe. With that in mind, NASA is developing an energy distribution system. Can be on a long moonlit night for several weeks, powering astronauts. This system may also be used on Mars in the future, if humans plan to stay on the lunar surface for a long time and build permanent residences. Engineers must be on Earth, anticipate all the dangers that await future colonists. There is nothing more cruel than the moon. It is even more unsuitable for the environment for human survival, but precisely because it is so close to the Earth, it doesn't fit better than it. Let's learn how to conquer the place of the alien environment. That's why, despite the difficulties, despite the tight budget, although the moon is annoying, despite the extreme temperature difference, humanity still has to return to the moon, because the moon is our first stepping stone into deep space. Humans make mistakes there, will fall on the somersault.